Just a word about me. My name is Tuli Weiss. I'm a rabbi, an Orthodox Jewish rabbi, and I'm from Columbus, Ohio, where my wife and myself and our children, we were living for the last 5 years. As I was the rabbi of a synagogue there, and just this year, though, we picked up our family, our little kids, and moved to Israel. And we've been here since August, so it's just been a few months for us. We're settling in, we're getting used to things, learning Hebrew, and loving every minute of it. It's really a blessing, and are just really so happy to be here, and it feels like a tremendous, tremendous privilege, and especially the Israel365, which was kind of a passion of mine that I got into my head while I was in Columbus, but really had the opportunity to get here in Israel, and keeps me connected to the land every day, putting together the photographs and the verses from the Bible and the description. So I am really enjoying it and getting a lot out of it. And I hope that you are too. Those of you who get the email every day, I hope that you're enjoying it half as much as I am. And really, I want to thank you for being on the list, for writing to me, emailing me every once in a while. I really do appreciate those emails. I really do value your feedback and your comments and your questions, and certainly if anybody has anything that they want me to address or any issue, I really take those emails very seriously and would be happy to respond to you. So so feel free to stay in touch with me through Israel365. But like I said, this is our first year being in Israel and not being together with our family, and especially when it comes to holiday time. So Passover is a big holiday that the family gets together, and for both my wife and myself, it is our first Passover not with our family, which is sad, and it's sad for our kids not to be with their grandparents, and so it's a bittersweet in that sense. And I think that's kind of what propelled me over the last couple of months to start thinking about Passover and thinking about, well, how am I going to make Passover special this year, being so far away from family and so far away from that which we're used to. So that's where this Haggadah that I've been preparing the last several months has really been kind of healing for me in that sense. I see that Paul says that they need to move here too. I agree with you, Paul, and we're trying to get them here. We're trying to get our family here. And I can only see Paul's question. I'm trying to scan the box so that I could see more than one at a time, but that's not happening, unfortunately. Let me scroll up. Gamani be Columbus in Hebrew. Okay, great. Can hear, speak. I am too. Yes, figured out. All right. Anyways, this isn't going to be quite as much of a two-way communication or conversation as I would have preferred, but you can always email me or try the question box. But if you have any questions and it doesn't look like the question box is really doing the trick here, then send me an email and I will respond to you after the broadcast. Okay. So the Haggadah was, like I said, something that kept me connected to Passover in a new way, in a very special way. But obviously, that's where the title came from. This year in Jerusalem, because for thousands of years the Jewish people have been sitting together around their tables and having a Passover Seder and saying next year in Jerusalem. And so for us, for my 3 children, for myself, this is the first time that we're able to say this year in Jerusalem, and really not only for ourselves but representing our ancestors, our grandparents, and our great-grandparents, and our great-great-grandparents who would have never imagined for a second that their descendants would be living in the land of Israel and having a Seder and celebrating Passover, and being able to say this year in the land of Israel was something that really resonated with me, and so that's really what the Haggadah is all about. So hopefully those of you who are on this call have had a moment to download the Haggadah, to take a look at the Haggadah, and I just wanted to walk everybody through it. And we will start. We'll start with with the Haggadah. I'm assuming that you can see the Haggadah that I have on my screen. Somebody want to just let me know, is that the case? Somebody just write. Hopefully you could see the Haggadah. Can somebody just type that in? Yeah, the Haggadah. I'm waiting here for. Yes. Okay. Sybil. Thank you, Sybil. Can see it. Oh, and Linda has printed it out too. Wonderful. Wonderful. Unlocked all panel. Let's see if I make this box bigger. If I make the box bigger, I could probably see a little bit more. Oh, that's good. Right. Jack, how do I print it? Ema. Okay, how do you print it? You just print it. It's a PDF document, so you just print it. Control P, or you just print it like any other PDF document. It should be pretty easy for you, hopefully. Let me see. I'm going to just try to X this out, and let me try to X this out. But how come I can't make this box bigger? All right. Well, I'm going to have some questions for the customer service people when this is over. All right, but I don't want to waste your time with all this technical stuff on my end, and let's just go right into it. Let's go right into it, okay? We're on the cover. We're going to go to the second page here, okay? So this is the icons that you'll see throughout the Haggadah. What makes this Haggadah special is that not only, every Haggadah is obviously in Hebrew, but in America, certainly many of the Haggadot are also in English, but we also added an extra dimension of transliteration, because I know that through Israel365, so many of you appreciate the transliteration, meaning that when we spell out the Hebrew, in English letterings, it obviously makes it very easy for people to read along, and we have that. Oh, okay. I'm talking kind of slowly because I'm figuring out how to see your question. All right, I got it. I figured it out. Anybody wants to ask me a question? First of all, just put it in the question box, and now I can actually see all your questions. Like to say, Paul, Lagno, and Joyce, welcome. It's good to at least see your name here on the list. So this Haggadah has, like I said before, the nice feature, the transliteration, which I think that you'll enjoy. There's the Hebrew letter, because again, Hebrew is the holy language. The language of Hebrew is not like English. It's not like Spanish. It's not like French or any other language. There's such depth that is built into every single word. This is obviously what we refer to as Lashon HaKodesh, the Hebrew tongue. The holy tongue, the language that God created the world with, the language with which God gave the Torah, and obviously there's great depth to the Hebrew language. So whenever I could point out a Hebrew lesson based on the text of the Haggadah, so I tried to do that as well. You have these sage advice, meaning these like rabbinical commentary that I've picked up along the years, and tried to share some of that with you. Then there are these Israel moments, which just ways to connect the Haggadah, this ancient text, with the modern Israel experience. And then finally, I have something here that you see on your screen that probably you're wondering, that's not on my Haggadah. This in the purple, the Seder melodies, these traditional tunes that there's a little icon that we added. That you could actually listen to how certain parts of the Seder are traditionally sang in Hebrew. And again, if you're struggling with the Hebrew, with the transliteration, so you might want to either download the newest edition of the Haggadah, go back to the eTeacher website, download the most current edition of the Haggadah, or what you could do is go to YouTube on the Israel365 video channel, and you could listen. We have 12 of these Seder melodies that are there as short YouTube clips. You could listen to them, and you could follow along. The English and the Hebrew are there on your screen. Or, if you don't want to go to YouTube, you can send me an email, and I will be happy to send you this new Haggadah, the one with the Seder melodies built in, embedded really into the Haggadah. One of the marvels of the technology. I don't know how many Haggadahs are out there in the world that have audio embedded into them. So we're kind of cutting edge here, and that's what you'll find throughout the Haggadah. I just got to offer a disclaimer. I'm sure you all know that Jewish doesn't allow us to use electricity on Shabbat or on festivals, on Passover, Seder night included. And so, you're not going to find a traditional Jewish house sitting around the table with their iPads and their tablets reading the Haggadah off of a smartphone. That just won't fly. So you're encouraged to print it out if you're going to use it. You're going to use it at your Seder table. Okay, so that's here on the introduction. The next page. Let me try to the next page. Okay, we have the welcome from eTeacher, the welcome with Israel, my letter, and here we go. Okay, page 6 is really the first page. Looks like a table of contents, and it is a table of contents, but it's also the first part of the Seder. So we all begin by singing this kind of song that goes over the order of the events. The word Seder means order, like if you could see that red box there. The word Seder means order, and it's the order of the evening. It's the order of the evening. And what this box here says is that, a lot of people have trouble with organized religion nowadays. Organized religion is a dirty word, and everybody wants to do their own thing and make up their own path. And especially a ritual, a service as ancient as the Seder, how is it that these prescribed steps don't ever get old? And that's because that even though there is a Seder, there's an order to the events. There is a lot of room for variety and personality to come through. Every family's Seder is a little bit different, and so we all stick to the same order. We stick to the same Seder, so that way that if I'm stranded in Paris and I need a Seder to go to, I know that I'm going to know exactly what's going on and I'm going to recognize it. Or if I'm in Cuba, or if I'm anywhere in the world, it doesn't even matter. The Seder is the Seder, the same way that the Jewish families have been celebrating for thousands of years. And we begin with a song that walks you through. And let me see if I click on it, what happens. I'm click on just to show you what's going to happen. It opens up a YouTube video, and you'll hear a cantor sing the words of the Seder, okay? And you'll hear him singing as soon as it loads. And it's something, again, that I urge you to do. Download the new Haggadah, so that way you could enjoy the audio that we work at. I think that it will add a lot to your experience. All right, that didn't work. That didn't work. Chrome is not cooperating. So let's just get back to our Haggadah. Page 6 is the order of the events. So we have here Kadesh. Kadesh is also known as the Kiddush, which is the blessing on the wine, which begins our meals every Friday night. Every Shabbat dinner begins with and every Jewish holiday as well. It's the first of the 4 cups of wine. And what you have to remember when you're making the Kiddush is that you say it standing up, but then when you say all the blessings, and then you sit down to drink, and you lean to your left. That's here on page 8 on the bottom, on the left-hand corner. It says that you should lean to your left, drink the first cup of wine while reclining, as many of the items of the Seder are done while reclining, which we'll hopefully get into a little bit later. But this beautiful blessing here, which is said on all Jewish holidays, "Blessed are you, God, our God, King of the universe, who has granted us life, sustained us, and enabled us to reach this occasion." And with that, the Kiddush is over, and we move to Orchatz, the next step in the Seder, Orchatz, which is wash our hands. Which the reason that we wash our hands is because, just like in the times of the temple, everything was eaten and prepared and offered in ritual purity, going to the ritual bath, the mikveh. So we don't have that anymore, the temple, but we do things in order to remember the temple, especially at the Seder. There's a very strong focus on the temple, and so we begin really the Seder by washing our hands with orchatz. The next step is karpas, a vegetable that we enjoy. And the reason that we do this is because back in the Talmudic times, back in the ancient times, 2,000 years ago, around the turn of the millennium, the turn of the in the beginning of the Common Era, so it was a sign of great wealth and luxury to begin a meal with this kind of appetizer, a vegetable, and that's why we begin with the karpas, to show that we are free men, to show that we are wealthy, we are free, we are partaking of a royal festive meal, and that's really what the karpas is all about. And then finally here on the bottom of page 9 is the yachat. So you take the middle matzah. What do I mean by the middle matzah? On the Seder table, there are 3 matzahs that are stacked on top of each other that we'll be eating from during the course of the Seder. So the first thing that we do is take middle matzah and we break it in half. We take the larger half and we set it aside for later on in the Seder, the afikomen. I think now would be a good time for me to catch my breath and to take a question. If anybody wants to type something into the question box, I'd be happy to see if I could answer it. Paul Lagno. Hi, Paul. I wonder if I could. I'm sure I could, but I don't know how to unmute you, Paul, and to hear what you have to say. Next time we'll have to, we'll let you ask your question in person. But for now, why is there first and second Seder? Okay, good question. Why is there a first and second Seder? That's a very good question. The answer is because there's 2 days of Passover in outside of the land of Israel. There's always 2 days of every Jewish holiday outside of the land of Israel. There's 2 days of Passover. There's 2 days of Shavuot. There's 2 days of Sukkot. Even though in Israel there's only 1 day of Passover, 1 day of Sukkot, 1 day of Shavuot, and it has to do with because in the land of Israel, so they knew exactly when the 5th of the month was of Nisan, and it took a while for the word to get out to those communities in Israel. So because they weren't sure what day the real day for Passover was, they would always celebrate, on the 15th of the month and also on the 16th, because they weren't entirely sure which was the true Hebrew date. And so obviously nowadays with the technology, we do know the right day, but nevertheless it's custom established that only in Israel do keep biblical festivals on the accurate day, the 1 day, and sort of as a way to kind of remember that the rest of the world is not quite Israel. So the rest of the world celebrates 2 days to show, to symbolize and signify that they're not quite sure where they're at. They're not quite sure what day of the week it is. They're not quite sure what Hebrew date of the month it is, to show the centrality of the land of Israel. Okay. So that's why there's 2 Seders. So this will be also, like I said before, it's our first year in the land of Israel, the first year in Israel for Pesach, and it's also going to be our first year of only having 1 Seder. My entire life, I'm 31 years old, I've had 2 Seders, and this will be my first year only having one Seder, so that's also kind of a new experience for us. All right, we're moving here along. The exact same thing 2 nights in a row. Exactly. It's the exact same thing 2 nights in a row, which is actually nice to try new things, and you could experiment, and you could kind of, if you forget something and you want to improve on it the second night. So the Seder is a really special night, and it will kind of be a little bit strange and unsettling only to have one Seder, even though, of course, that is the right way, the way that it's supposed to be done. Here we are on page 10, Magid. Okay, the Magid section of the Seder is really now we're at the meat and potatoes of the Seder. Okay, this is what it's all about, telling over the story. The word Magid comes from the verse that you shall tell your children when your children will ask you, what did God do for you? So you will tell them that with a strong arm God took us out of the land of Egypt. And the Hebrew word is v'higadeta levincha. You shall tell your children. And Magid comes from that same word of telling over the story, which also, if your ear is trained, so you'll notice that the word Haggadah, the Haggadah is also the same root as Magid. The same word as v'higadeta, Haggadah. The Haggadah of Passover comes from telling over the story. And it begins with a paragraph that we raise up the matzah, we lift it in our hand, and we say, this is the bread of affliction that our fathers ate in the land of Egypt. Whoever is hungry, let him come and eat. Whoever needs, let him come and conduct the Seder of Passover. This year we are here, next year in the land of Israel. This year we are slaves, next year we will be free people. And that's how we begin. We begin by extending an invitation to those who are hungry to come and join us. And we begin our festive meal by showing that it's not really just about our family, our immediate family, but anybody who needs a place to go, anybody who's hungry is welcome to sit down with us. And then we begin the Manish Tana. The Manish Tana, what makes this night different from all other nights? And we have a series here now of 4 questions. And my children are young. Our kids are 5 and 6 years old, and probably and we have a 2-year-old, and he's a little bit too young. But really, the first thing that children learn is the Manish Tana, the 4 questions. And this is a nice part of the Seder where really the youngest child at the table stands up and sings these 4 questions. Manish Tana, why is this night different than all the other nights? Because again, the Seder is meant to be a family experience where everybody gets in on the act. And then after asking these 4 questions, we turn to page 11 and we begin with the answer. Okay, and it goes from page 11 and then 12, 13, 17, 18, okay, 19, it's there. Because again, this idea of telling the story, why is this night different? And we spend, some families will spend 2 hours, 3 hours just on the section of the Magid, really making sure that the children appreciate that which God did for us when taking us out of Egypt. The Magid is one of the most, I don't want to say the most important part of the Seder because that would be hard to do. There's a lot of very important parts of the Seder, but certainly the Magid in many ways is the heart of the Seder, and so you can't go through it. If you could read all the words, it will just take you probably 5-10 minutes, but nobody spends 5-10 minutes on the Magid section. You're really supposed to really go into great detail and try very much to relate to the Exodus on a personal level. We go through these 10 plagues, and when saying the 10 plagues here on page 20, when mentioning each one of the 10 plagues here on page 20, what we do is we dip our pinky in our cup of wine, by this time we're on our second cup of wine, we refill it, and we dip our pinky in and spill a little bit of wine when we mention each one of the 10 plagues. And the reason that we do it, just to make sure that everyone out there is alive, let me throw that question out there to you. Why do we spill a drop of wine when mentioning the 10 plagues? Let me throw that out to the audience. We have 34 people attending, and I'd like to thank you all for listening and joining us. And who's going to be the first one to answer the question? Why do we spill a drop of wine when mentioning each one of these 10 plagues? Come on, I know you know the answer. I know you know the answer. All right, I'm not getting a response. I'm not getting a response. We're going to stop right here. We're going to just stop right here until I know that you're listening to me. Am I talking to myself? Okay, I think the answer is, okay, oh, thank you, Robert. Say me. Robert, looks like Hilker. We diminish our joy. Even though we are so happy we are celebrating our freedom from Egypt and our deliverance from slavery. We recognize the suffering that the Egyptians underwent, and in some way we diminish our joy, just like Robert said, we diminish our joy, and our cup cannot be full at the expense of the suffering of the Egyptians. And that's a really important lesson as religious people, that on the one hand we pray for the downfall of our enemy and for the evildoers to repent and repent their ways. Nevertheless, we also don't rejoice at the downfall of our enemies. We're not animals. We don't dance on our rooftops when people are killed. God forbid. And even if they're terrorists, you won't find Israel celebrating the death of terrorists, like unfortunately you do see when it comes to our enemies who celebrate the death of innocents. We don't even celebrate the death or the suffering of our enemies, of terrorists, or in this case the Egyptians. And that's an important lesson that we try to convey by our finger in wine and dropping a drop of wine out when we say each one of these 10 plagues. We're going to move now to the next page, to page 21. Okay, the Magid continues until 22, where we have the great song Dayenu. Okay, Dayenu has kind of entered the vernacular, meaning to say, enough is enough. That word in Hebrew means enough. And here we have one of the beloved Seder tunes, which again urge you to check out YouTube or download the new Haggadah so that you could hear the cantor singing the Dayenu, where we say that if God would have brought us out of Egypt but had not punished the Egyptians, Dayenu, that would have been enough. And then we go on and on and on to really show how much we appreciate action that God did for us throughout the course of the Exodus, throughout the course of our redemption. And we say things that are so kind of wild. We say that if God would have brought us, here on page 23, let me play around here. There's look at this. Here, watch. Everyone's going to like this, okay? What? Give us, no. How do you like this? If he had brought us before Mount Sinai and had not given us the Torah, Dayenu. You know what this little red dot looks like, actually? Everybody's Haggadah is not, you're not allowed to have a clean Haggadah. The Haggadah sits with you year by year at the Seder table, and everyone, you're dripping wine on the Haggadah. It's not a real Haggadah until you drip some wine onto it. So this little red dot shows me that this Haggadah is a real Haggadah because it looks like it dropped a little drop of wine on it. If he had brought us before Mount Sinai and had not given us the Torah, that would have been enough. Obviously, that's a wild thing. That God would have brought us and left us hanging. That would have been enough. I mean, at the next one, if he had given us the Torah and had not brought us into the land of Israel, that would have been enough. What do you mean that would have been enough? To have led us for 40 years in the desert, given us the Torah, and then not brought us into the land of Israel? How in the world would that have been enough? God promised Abraham that we're going to go into the land of Israel. Moses says, let my people go so that they may go to the land flowing with milk and honey. How could it be enough if we were to not go into and enter the land of Israel? Or finally, the last paragraph here, the last passage, he had brought us into the land of Israel and had not built up for us the chosen house, the Beit HaBechira, the temple. That would have been enough. And some explanations, how would this have been enough? The point really is that we need to recognize that God did do not only one of these things, God did each step of it. He carried us on his shoulders. And look here at the bottom. Let me find a different one. Keep it interesting. Here at the arrow. Thus, how much more so should we be grateful to the omnipresent one for the doubled and redoubled goodness that he has bestowed. For he has brought us out of Egypt, and carried out judgments against them, and against their idols, and smote their firstborns, and gave us page 24. Second. Okay. So we normal non-drawing pen. So never all of this, and sorry, here we go. Okay, yet God has split the sea through it and drowned our oppressors, and then supplied our needs in the desert for 40 years. Fed us the man, gave us the Shabbat, brought us before Mount Sinai, gave us the Torah, and brought us into the land of Israel, and built for us the chosen house to atone for all of our sins. How much more so must we say Dayenu? Must we say thank you? And that's really what the Passover Seder is all about, saying thank you to God. So now, again, another very important thing here of the Magid is Rabbi Gamliel used to say, whoever does not discuss the following three things on Passover has not fulfilled his duty. And they are the lamb, the matzah, and the bitter herbs. You have to not only mention words, but you have to go into detail and try to talk about all of this. And you finally then, we end of the Magid on page 27, conclude with the Magid. Okay? And again, to signify that we're finishing a section of the Haggadah, we raise our glasses, we fill up the cup of wine with our second cup of wine, we recite the blessing on the wine, we lean to the left, and we drink the second out of the 4 cups of wine. Okay. Let me see if there's anybody want to take a minute to ask a question? Open up that box. Breaking up. Jack is telling me I'm breaking up. I hope you can still hear me. Can anybody still hear me? Jack Johnson told me at 8. Yes. Yes, I'm breaking up, or yes, you could hear me. Sue Ann Glass. I'm listening to you. Oh, okay, breaking up a little. Right. All right. I see the quality of the audio is not that amazing, not that great, which I'm sorry about. I'm not even on wireless into the wall, so that way I'd be able to clearly. But maybe the next time we do this, we'll do it over the phone. We'll do a conference call, and we'll see, though. But the vision of this, obviously, is that we can go through the Haggadah, and you can see what I have on my screen. So it looks like, okay, Jack, you are learning. Good. All right, Jack is learning, so we're going to continue. On page 27, the Haggadah is 60 pages, so we're halfway through. But if you think about it, we're about 2 hours into the Seder, so we're doing pretty good. It took us 40 minutes, but if this was the real thing, it would have at least taken you 2, maybe 3. Okay, let's see. The next step after the Magid is the Rachtzah. Once again, we wash our hands. I could speak about the Rachtzah for like 20 minutes, but basically it's very similar to the first time we wash our hands. Each one is important, and you could write a whole Haggadah on each one of these steps. But now page 28, Motzi, Matzah, Maror. Okay, we say these blessings on we start. Now we start to eat the matzah. It's the first time we're going to eat the matzah. Now, it's interesting because we have a rule or a tradition that we don't eat matzah before Passover for 30 days before Passover. You're allowed to eat matzah all year round. Obviously, it's kosher, okay? However, for 30 days before Passover, we don't eat matzah. It's not kosher. You're not going to eat matzah days before Passover. And so when you sit down at the and you're not even allowed to begin until after nightfall. Okay, so keep that in mind for this Friday night. You want to start when it gets dark. It's already the springtime, and the sun is going down even later. The Seder is not in Israel, and probably the same in America, till at 7:30, 8 o'clock. So by the time that you're getting the matzah, it's at least 10 o'clock at night. You're hungry. Okay, you're hungry, and you haven't had matzah for at least 30 days, but the truth is that most people don't really eat matzah during the course of the year so often, so you probably haven't had matzah in an entire year. By the time that you make this blessing on the matzah, and you eat the matzah while leaning to the left and reclining, it's very, very special, and it's really very fulfilling, and not just filling, but fulfilling, and there's something very, very holy and special about eating the matzah at this point in the Seder. As soon as we enjoy the matzah, leaning to our left, now it gets serious again, and we eat the maror, the bitter herbs. And there's different kinds of bitter herbs that you could pick out at the supermarket. A lot of people will just get a horseradish, the root of a horseradish, and it's very, very spicy, but that's the point. It's supposed to make you cry. It's supposed to make you feel the pain of the slavery, and you eat that while you are not leaning to the left, okay? You're not to lean during the left when eating the maror, because after all, the times we lean are to signify our freedom and to symbolize our luxury and our royalty. So obviously the bitter herbs are to remind us of the slavery, and therefore eaten very seriously while not leaning to our left. We take the matzah, you take a little bit of the bitter herbs, and you dip it into it. There's a special dip that is made. You can look it up. I'm sure you can find 100 ways on and find a good recipe. It's basically made out of nuts and wine and apple, and it goes into the sandwich, which we eat at this point. Finally, 3 hours later, again, this is also because families getting together, haven't seen each other for a long time, and it's not only a holiday meal, it's not Thanksgiving, it's not just any regular occasion, it's celebrating and symbolizing our freedom. And so we really, really enjoy a nice long meal at this point. And then finally, we get back to tafun, is the afikomen. If you remember from the very beginning of the Seder, we had the second, the third step is yachatz. We break the middle matzah. We put aside half for the afikomen. Now we eat the afikomen after the meal is over, sort of like as our dessert. And then on page 30, we say the grace after meals, the birkat hamazon, page 30, 31, 2, 34, to the end of until right here on page 36. Okay, and now we have our third cup of wine, and we then open the door for Elijah. Okay, we open the door for Elijah, and on the bottom of page 36, and we say this passage that is going to sound a bit unsettling, perhaps, okay? And I don't want to skip over, because I do think that it's very important to kind of discuss and talk about, and perhaps some questions for me, or this certainly will pique your interest. Opening up the door upon the nations that do not acknowledge you, and upon the kings that do not call upon your name, for they have devoured Jacob and laid waste his habitation. Pour out your indignation upon them, and let the wrath of your anger overtake them. Pursue them with anger, and destroy them from beneath the heaven. Now this is a very unusual passage. Throughout the year of Jewish liturgy and practice and rituals and services and prayers, you will never find a prayer as as powerful and even as or meaning even perhaps as violent as this passage, this paragraph right here. And so you have to understand the context, okay? And basically, the context is that Passover, as you know, falls out the same time of year as the non-Jewish holidays, the Christian holidays. Today, in fact, on the cover of the Jerusalem Post was hundreds of Christians holding up a palm branch because of Palm Sunday, and it always falls out around Palm Sunday, around Easter time. And Passover was always a very dangerous time of the year for the Jews and for Jewish communities because of the proximity to the Christian holy days. And it was a time of pogrom. It was a time of blood libel. On Passover, Jews were accused of killing Christian babies and putting the blood into the matzah. And so because of that, Passover was often a time where Jewish communities were afraid of their lives, especially when the Jewish communities I'm talking about in medieval Europe primarily, where they were worried about the Crusaders, or they were worried about the Russian peasants, or they were worried about the Christian anti-Semites who came out of woodwork during Passover. And it was I can't tell you how scary it was Passover time for many Jewish communities living under the Christian anti-Semitism. And to me, what is so incredible about the times that we live in is how much that has changed in just the last, really years, 40 years, 50 years, 60 years. Probably, from the Holocaust, from the time of the Holocaust and from the time of the founding of the State of Israel, we've had such a theological shift that we're not even really fully able to comprehend because we had this theological shift where much of the, not all, but much of the Christian world has come towards the people, towards Israel, in support of Israel. And so therefore, I found this manuscript, this passage here on the left side of the screen that comes from a 1521 manuscript. We're talking about 500-year-old manuscript. One of the Haggadah said that, no, don't pour out death on the nations, but this must have been written by a Jewish community who was protected by their neighbors and had good relations with the non-Jews in their communities and in their world. And so let's look what this manuscript from 500 years ago has to say. Pour an alternative passage from a 1521 manuscript. Pour out your love on the nations who know you, and on kingdoms who call your name, for the good which they do for the seed of Jacob. And they shield your people, and they merit to see the good of them and to rejoice in the joy of your nation. And that's really, thank God that's the times that we're living in today, that certainly in America, certainly in other parts of the world, the Jews can open up the door and with the same fervor and the same passion and the same emotion cry out to God, pour out your love on the nations who know you and on the kingdoms who call your name. Certainly there are still the nations that do not acknowledge God, and there are, however, we're really living in a special time, this era of reconciliation with the Jews and the non-Jews in many ways, and it's specifically over the land of Israel, which I think is why it's so unbelievable. The non-Jews who recognize the hand of God and acknowledge his name and his role in bringing back the Jewish people to the land of Israel. And at this point in the Seder is a time to acknowledge the special times that we are living in. We're going to now move towards the next section on page 37, Hallel. We now sing these are passages from Psalms, Psalm 114 and 115, 116, 117, a very beautiful section of the Psalms. And again, keep in mind this is already after the third cup of wine. This is after a good meal. We're starting to really enjoy ourselves, and the singing really is a very pure and lofty and spiritual singing that begins here on page 37, goes on to 38, and 39, and 40. Look at that picture on the bottom of page 40. Again, those of you who have older versions of this Haggadah, older, when I say old, last week's version, you know, that's really the beauty of doing an ebook, is that you don't send it to the printer and then, you know, you're done with it. You're always you know, able to update it, which I guess is the beauty of an ebook, but that's also kind of that's the bad part of an ebook too, is that you're never really finished. You could always do better, and you could become a little bit. And after everything was said and done, I found this from one of our photographers actually shared with me this photograph he had on page 40. And we took out one of the other pictures and put this one instead, and it's a panoramic night view of the wall, and I just think it's awesome. So if the audio didn't convince you to download the new edition of the Haggadah, then perhaps this picture here on page 40 will. Okay, now we have 41, continuing with the Hallel, Psalm 243. 4, 45, and finally we have the fourth cup of wine at the end of the Hallel on 46, the last of the 4 cups of wine. We're clearly getting to the end of Seder. And this actually on page 47 is in fact the last of the 15 steps of the Seder, the Nirtzah, where we say, you know, we have now concluded the service of the Seder service, and of course, again, this very, very famous prayer song, cry, L'Shana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim. And we have it for you again in Hebrew and in English. Take a minute to look at the left side of the page, the transliteration. And if you're going to come away from this 1-hour Haggadah crash course learning at least one Hebrew phrase, and that is L'Shana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim. Say that with me. L'Shana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim. I can hear you. I can hear you saying that. And next year in Jerusalem, that is the prayer. Jewish families, Jews around the world for thousands of years. L'Shana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim. Next year in Jerusalem. That's how every Seder, every 2 Seders, I should say, throughout the exile, throughout the dispersion, throughout all 4 corners of the world, the Seder always ends with next year in Jerusalem. Okay, I'm just going to acknowledge what Fred Long just told me, that he just downloaded the Haggadah from the website. Page 40 shows mountains, meaning that eTeacher did not yet update the new Haggadah. So I'm sorry to hear that. I sent them this morning, Israel time, so a good 12 hours ago, and they really should have by now updated it. So do me a favor, Fred, send me an email, okay? Everybody is welcome to send me an email at rabbituly at Israel365.co.il, and I will send you the updated Haggadah. Let's keep moving on your lunch break, and I want to make sure that you get back to work on time. Finally, here we have on page 48 one of the concluding songs of the Seder. We have about 4 or 5 beautiful concluding songs of the Seder, and this is called B'chatzi Halayla, in the middle of the night. And these are all the miracles that, according to Jewish tradition, God did for the Jewish people throughout our history. And what they have in common is that they were all done in the middle of the night. And those of you who are paying attention to Israel 365 know that today we I was very excited to release a music video that we were involved in the production of that's actually called Vayehi Bechatzi Halayla in Hebrew, and it came to pass in the middle of the night. It's a little bit of a mouthful, so we changed the song title to Midnight Escape to be a little bit catchier on YouTube. But check that out. Check out that video, Midnight Escape, that is on the Israel365 YouTube channel. And it's a dramatic a portrayal of this song here in Haggadah. And I hope that you enjoy it and share that video, because we're really, really hoping that will take. Okay, Diane, see you later. Blessed Pesach to you as well. Yes, Paul, it is in Hebrew. Okay, moving right along here. Thank you for joining us, Diane. And anybody else who has to go, I know it's 8:59, so I would be offended if you have to go. And page verse 52, and now here I just want to mention song on page 53. This is a great song. This is like a real classic and beloved Seder song. Who knows one? There's every Who knows one. It's pedagogical to teach your kids about the principles of faith. Who knows one? One is the God in the earth. Who knows two? Two are the tablets that the tablets that Moses brought down, the tablets of the law. Who knows three? Three are the patriarchs. Who knows four? Four are the matriarchs, and so on and so forth. 8, 9, 11, 12. And this is a great song. And then finally, the last Seder song is Haggadah, One Little Goat. Okay, that's also kind of a mystical song. Okay, it's a mystical song. It's not as clear cut as Who Knows One. You'll go through time and you'll see what I mean. Just keep in mind that it's not really about a little goat or a little or a cat dog and a stick. It had kind of to bring you here to page 60. Page 60 is a tradition that my family has from my grandfather. I already established the tradition of concluding each Seder with the Hatikvah. Hatikvah obviously is a recent addition to the Seder. It doesn't go back thousands of years like any of the other parts of the Seder, but it does, I think, tie it together home the lesson that the hope of the Jewish people, Hatikvah of course means hope, the hope of the Jewish people is that next year we shall be in Israel, and especially those of us who are living in these times where we're able to be in the land of Israel. It's really a very, very powerful to end the Seder with Hatikvah. And there's also another great picture here on the bottom, the same photographer, the panorama, and a great quote from David Ben-Gurion that you'll have to look at when you have a moment. Just really, you could spend a lot of time with the Haggadah. People do spend a lot of the time with the Haggadah, and I certainly encourage you to do so. I hope that you enjoyed this and got something out of it. I know that I have lessons, and I learned some lessons mainly from GoToWebinar, what I need to work on for next time. But we will hopefully do this again in the future, another webinar maybe before the next holiday of Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel Independence Day. We'll try to organize another one of these webinars, and I really, again, just urge you to check out Israel365. A lot of these lessons I try to weave into Israel365. I'm going to be writing, it was released just today, a article that I wrote on Passover on Teach for Israel, which is another website that I'm involved with, teachisrael.org, and I have that Passover message that I wrote posted already on teachforisrael.org. That's another website that you should join, you should subscribe to, so that you and again, Teach for Israel is the only organization that connects rabbis and Christian leadership to support Israel, to do everything in our ability to come together over our shared biblical heritage and support the Jewish state. And that's really what Teach for Israel is doing, and it's a great organization to get involved with. So I will encourage you to send me questions by email. I'm happy to answer some. I could stay on for a few minutes, and if anybody wants to ask questions, to type them in here. I'm happy to answer questions. And again, Israel is a passion of mine. It's a kind of a joy for me to be involved with. And I we don't charge people for it, but if you are able to make a donation to sponsor it certainly would help offset some of the costs of putting Teach to Israel365 out each day, and I would certainly really appreciate it if you. It's only $18. You could sponsor a day in honor of a special occasion for $18, and you'll be acknowledged in the email. Thank God the list is growing really by leaps and bounds. We started on January 1st, and we're already up to over 7,000 people each day, which is wonderful. And I think we're just starting to make a dent, scratch the surface, and hopefully reach more people and show them the beauty of the land of Israel. So could you please send your email? My email address is Rabbi Tully, RABBI Why don't I at Israel365.co.il? I'm going to actually try to type there. Rabbi Tully at 365.co.il. There we go. I'm going to send you my email. If you're welcome to send me an email. Let's see. My printer is not working. Can I go back online to print this after today? Yeah, of course you can. The Haggadah is available, at that eTeacher website. Hopefully by tomorrow, it will be the newer one will be available. Let's see, what else do we have? We have another questions. Okay, questions. It is 9:05 in Israel. My kids are still not sleeping, so I'm going to try to make sure that they get to bed. And I wish everybody a blessed day and a Chag Sameach, a happy Passover. Shalom, and thank you again for joining us.